Lilith has just announced 3 new commanders coming to Rise of Kingdoms very, very soon. And in today's video, we're going to be talking all about them. We'll go over the skills that have been announced. We'll go over the commanders themselves and what they mean for the current Rise of Kingdoms meta and the future commanders that will be released. Because these 3 commanders are extremely interesting and have a lot more than meets the eye. So if you're interested in the 3 new commanders announced today in Rise of Kingdoms, you want to stick around till the end of the video. Now let's start off today's video by just getting straight into the commanders themselves, because of course that's what you guys are actually here for. So here are the 3 new commanders. I might butcher some of these names, hopefully I don't offend anyone, it is an accident. If I do, I don't actually mean it. And the first one here is the father of the Terrico. I hope I said that right, probably didn't. And he is an engineering versatility attack commander, which obviously means he's a ranged open field commander. And then we have the Jono Rojo de Raha, probably butchered that completely, not even close to how you're supposed to say it. No one clip that, please. And he is an engineering versatility defense commander. Once again, definitely for the open field, probably going to be ranged, and we'll get into that a bit later. And then we have the Shorestone Shield, which I can actually say, and he's a leadership garrison skill damage commander. And really, I mean, it's not that uncommon nowadays to see 3 commanders around the leadership cycle. We have actually seen this before. And I think that realistically, 2 of these commanders are going to be in the Wheel of Fortune. Maybe there'll be an event for one of them, like with Margaret I. And then the Shorestone Shield is just going to be in the Mightiest Governor. Along with announcing these 3 commanders, Lilith has also mentioned their skills. You can see here each commander has a small little breakdown of what their skill kits might be. And we'll start off with, I'm going to call him Hara. I'm not going to read his whole name. So Hara's skills are pretty simple. They've got ranged smite damage and healing. That's basically what we've been told. The most interesting thing there is definitely the ranged smite damage. We really thought smite damage would be infantry only, but we can see Lilith has added it to ranged commanders. And the same thing for the father of the Terrico. They have ranged smite damage as well as disarm. And to be honest, disarm is a really powerful mechanic. So seeing it on a commander is actually pretty interesting. We know that disarm can be used to completely shut down any commander, because the way it works is basically it stops you from doing any attacks. Your normal attacks and your skill attacks pretty much get cancelled with a disarm. That is why most disarms we see last a maximum of like 1. I think maybe there's only a single disarm, that might be Artemisia, where it lasts 2 seconds. So disarm is often a short-lived thing, but it's very powerful and pretty much allows you to get a whole extra turn of damage onto your opponent. So disarm is really interesting to have on a ranged commander. Not sure how it will work, we'll have to see when he fully releases, but I'm sure it will be quite powerful. Something I'd also like to mention, the names on these commanders are not actually the names they will have in-game. These are just placeholders for the challenge that Lilith is running right now, but we do have some looks at their kits. As for the Hara commander, he's also ranged smite damage, but the healing in his kit kind of suggests to me he's going to be a bit more of a tanky commander, because usually when Lilith gives healing, it's to give them some tankiness. Obviously, that's not how it works with healing, but that's probably what they're going for, and I'm sure he's going to have stuff like counterattack increase and things maybe such as normal damage increases as well, because he is also a smite commander. So I wouldn't be surprised if the new range commander, Hara, I'm just going to call him Hara, has some form of counter swarm or some form of extra damage that allows him to be a bit more tanky on the open field. As for the Shorestone Shield, our garrison commander, we can see that he has AoE damage. This is definitely just normal skill damage, and he also has a disarm effect. Once again, disarm really powerful. Kind of crazy to see it. The last time we saw disarm was, I think, with Artemisia in her garrison skill, and he's also got AoE damage. I don't think this means we will have an AoE disarm commander. That would probably be too overpowered, but as a garrison, he may have something in his active skill that allows him to disarm a rally for 2 seconds or even just a second, or maybe like Artemisia, it's just a passive skill slot with a nice little buff pretty much. So I think the Shorestone Shield will be a solid, just mixed troop garrison with some good old AoE damage, which means he'll probably be like Heraclius in a way. So I'm not too surprised that they're adding another leadership garrison. Heraclius was definitely very well received, and adding more AoE damage to a garrison kind of seems the way that Lilith is going. Personally, I don't like AoE damage garrisons. They're very annoying to deal with, but they are obviously strong garrisons in general. So I don't think the Shorestone Shield will disappoint whichever commander this is, and I think they will be quite powerful as a garrison in general. So now that we've looked at all 3 commanders' skills and who they are and their talent trees, what do I think of their impact on the current meta? And I mean, it's kind of interesting what they're doing, but they're not going to be too impactful. Realistically, we're getting a garrison commander and we're getting 2 more ranged commanders. And yes, Lilith is trying to push these ranged commanders more and more, but they're just a different playstyle, which doesn't go in with an older account. Let's say your account, if you're running 3 marches, it's going to be almost impossible to justify running a ranged march. It's ridiculous how they run compared to the other marches if you aren't running only ranged marches. But for the players who are running ranged marches, these 2 new commanders are obviously going to be pretty strong. And the leadership garrison, I think they're going to be a good garrison, there's no doubt in my mind, but then again, it's just another new garrison. So these commanders aren't absolutely game-changing. The only real interesting thing to see there was the fact that we do have ranged smite damage. A lot of players predicted smite damage would be infantry only. However, it is now onto ranged commanders, which could mean in the future that we see some other commanders with smite damage and it's not an infantry only thing. Maybe we see some cavs with smite damage. That is certainly possible because we haven't seen any cav commanders since smite damage was first introduced, but I have my doubts archers will ever receive smite damage since they seem like the new version of just skill DPS, pure damage machines with no smite damage. So smite damage certainly possible to add on to more marches, but for now I think it's going to probably stay as an engineering thing just to give them some more value, and an infantry thing because that's kind of what they're known for at the moment. So the smite damage is interesting, but once again I think it's only going to stay within those 2 different classes. I doubt Cavs will receive smite, and I definitely doubt that archers will receive smite in the near future at least. Now, as for the commander pairings, we'll just start up with the engineering commanders. I think realistically the 2 new smite commanders are going to work really well together because they are smite commanders. I don't think the 2 other engineering commanders, Barbara and Margaret, will be very good with the smite engineering commanders, because smite damage with smite damage is always going to be stronger than smite damage with normal damage factor. And even though Margaret does have a really solid range normal damage boost, I think that they're still going to be stronger together rather than with Margaret. But while we look at Margaret and Barbara's kit, there's really nothing that restricts them from going with the new smite commanders. Realistically, the only thing that is bad in Margaret's kit with the new smite range commanders is the skill damage bonus which she gives, but she has a ton of other stuff just going on in her kit, plus the ridiculous range normal bonus, which means she could also work with those commanders, there's no doubt about it. But I don't think it's going to be too crazy for the 2 new smite commanders to go together, and then Margaret and Barbara stay as 1 march, which is just 2 range marches at this point that you're able to run. As for the leadership garrison commander, I think he's going to work with pretty much anybody. He's going to be like a Heraclius, but I'm going to guess he's not going to be as tanky as Heraclius, because when you look at Heraclius' kit, I'm pretty sure he's got no debuffs in it, if I'm not mistaken, and because of that, I'm going to presume that Heraclius is going to be the tank in the march, and this Shorestone Shield commander is going to be the more DPS commander who does the damage, he has the debuffs, but he's not very tanky. So I'll say the Shorestone Shield's going to work with the tankier garrisons like Heraclius, but Heraclius is going to be the main mixed troop you go to for garrisons like, let's say, archers or even cavalry. But I think a Heraclius with a Shorestone Shield, whoever that commander ends up being, is going to be a very, very solid just garrison overall combo, because you could run mixed troops since it is a leadership garrison, and you have the AoE damage plus the disarm in that garrison as well. So I think you're going to have that tankiness with that kind of glass cannon, but still somewhat tanky garrison, which will make the new best mixed troop garrison. It's almost going to be like when Theodora and YSS were meta and they were put together for city garrisons and some flag garrisons. So Heraclius with the Shorestone Shield is definitely going to be a solid garrison. And then I'd say that possibly things like Ditto with them, and then Gorgo, and then even maybe Ziska or the next Cav garrison that we see will go pretty well with this commander. Now, as for open field potential on the Shorestone Shield, I've got my doubts with it. I mean, Heraclius as a leadership garrison definitely has set the standard that he's not really an open field commander. I mean, he was barely usable when he first released, and nowadays he's just not an open field commander. He's only there for your garrisons. Same things when YSS was released, and the same thing with Theodora when she was released. So realistically, I think this Shorestone Shield commander is not going to be good on the open field. They're just going to stay as a garrison. They're not going to really be like a Trajan pair like I predicted. They're really just going to be a very solid garrison with Heraclius that's going to work with a few other commanders as well. But I don't think he's going to be bad by any means. He's just going to be a solid and strong commander for leadership garrisons and the possible like future of leadership garrisons with other commanders as well. Now, the next thing I'd like to discuss about the 3 new commanders coming to Rise of Kingdoms is there possible impacts on the game, because there are a few things that we can actually take away from the 3 commanders that are coming to the game. And the first one is, I think Lilith is going to move in on ranged commanders a little bit more. It's quite obvious Lilith wants more ranged commanders in the game. Lilith wants people to use those ranged commanders. So I think it's not too crazy to say we'll probably see a siege weapon at some point into the gear. I don't know when this will happen. I'd say it's probably within the next year or two. And we've already had confirmed there are going to be ranged accessories coming. We don't know what that means. I'd say it's like a Ring of Doom possibly, but with ranged commanders, because we know, I'm pretty sure someone told me this, that the Ring of Doom doesn't trigger with ranged commanders, and the same thing with the Horn of Fury. So we could see those in a ranged commander form, or we could see something as simple as the Greatest Glory, but it's just range damage instead of normal damage. So definitely Lilith is moving in on ranged commanders. They've already made legendary gear for it, they've made epic gear for it as well, and then now they've confirmed they're adding accessories, plus they're adding 2 new ranged commanders. So ranged commanders definitely are not something we'll see going away anytime soon with their engineering tree. We may even see with the new formations that Lilith has confirmed a while ago that haven't come yet, a V formation that's like an arch formation, because when we look at ranged commanders, they've now got smite damage. Maybe a new V formation allows them to deal that 5% extra normal damage, but also do ranged attacking. So I think more formations are pretty much guaranteed to come eventually with these new ranged commanders that give them some form of a buff as well, which would be interesting to see, but also maybe not very good for people who are siege mains that have to now get a second formation while they've already made one formation for themselves. But another thing they can also, I guess, appreciate is the fact that Lilith has not forgot about engineering commanders, and I'd say over the coming years, we will see more and more engineering commanders added to the game until they're pretty much a fully fledged class, rather than just like a side thing you can do with your farm accounts, or something a few players choose to do. Because I've seen some reports with Margaret and Barbara, and honestly, they can be insane, like 5 million kill points to 500,000, stupid numbers like that, because Margaret and Barbara perform really well if you got the open field presence, and I think these new commanders will be no different. So siege and range commanders definitely have a lot of potential for the future, and Lilith is also not really giving up on them anytime soon. The same thing can be said for leadership garrisons. Lilith is moving back into leadership garrisons after YSS and Heraclius. We didn't really see much, and now they're adding another leadership garrison to the game, and I think Lilith is going to continue down this path, and eventually they may try to do a leadership rally again, like they did with Suleiman, but I think leadership rallies will always be almost destined to fail, but there is a good chance that eventually Lilith does add another leadership rally that can do okay but not too amazing, and I think forever Lilith is going to continue adding leadership garrisons into the game that do something different or synergize well with just all commanders in general to make very solid garrison pairings. Another thing we can take into account here is the fact that I think Lilith is also going to stick with releasing 3 commanders every time a leadership cycle comes around, and the reason I believe this is because they've done it once already now. They released Margaret and Barbara alongside Heraclius, and I think in the future, they're going to continue doing 2 engineering and 1 leadership for probably the rest of Rise of Kingdoms, because Lilith definitely wants there to be more engineering commanders, and leadership is definitely not a big class in the game, so they just kind of merged them, and because people are kind of in the middle, they don't really care about leadership, they don't really care about engineering, and only a few players do, they're just going to continue doing that until pretty much either engineering becomes really, really big, or until leadership becomes a class that no one uses at all. So I'd say we predict more and more leadership commanders will be coming out with 2 engineering commanders over the coming years, since engineering definitely are moving towards becoming pretty much their own class and their own type of open field in Rise of Kingdoms. So now that we've discussed pretty much everything to do with the commanders themselves, what about a little bit of speculation here? When do I think that these 2 or 3 new commanders are going to release in the game, and where do I think they will be? Well, first of all, I'd say that the new Shorestone Shield commander, whoever that ends up becoming, will end up as a Mightiest Governor commander, and for all 3 of these commanders, they're probably going to release within the next month to the next month and a half, because when we saw a Showbunny Pile and Herman Prime announced, I think they released a month and a half later, and when we saw it was Justinian and Hao Bing announced, they released like a month and a half later, and I think Lilith is going to continue that trend, which is why I'd say we can predict these new commanders coming in between the 10th of March to like the 30th of March. Within that time frame, I'd say we see them roll out into the game, and we'll see them come into their respective events. First of all, the leadership commander definitely, in my opinion, will be in the Mightiest Governor, alongside with Heraclius, and then the two range commanders, I'm not sure how Lilith is going to do it. They may do what they did last time, where one range commander is inside of an event like Margaret, and the other one is in just the Wheel of Fortune. That is certainly a possibility, and something Lilith may go through with, because they have had a tendency recently to put commanders in events. I mean, we saw Loud Chain event, we've seen Margaret in an event, and I don't think it's too far-fetched to guess they'll add one of the new range commanders into maybe just a login calendar or something you can spend a bit of money on, and then they'll just chuck the other one into just a Wheel of Fortune and be quite simple there. So I think definitely possible. Another event comes into the game for these commanders. Eventually they'll go into the legendary chest, and then the other commander just stays as a Wheel of Fortune commander for quite a while, and eventually they'll also end up in the legendary chest as well. So realistically, we'll see these commanders in a month and a half, one being the leadership commander and the Mightiest Governor. The other engineering commander will be inside the Wheel of Fortune, and the final one will most likely be inside of some event that you can get them for free. So now that we've made it to the end of today's video, I just want to ask you guys for a very, very small favor, and that is, tell me, what do you guys think of these commanders? Do you think they're going to be extremely game-changing? Maybe I underestimated them. Or do you think they're just going to be just another two range commanders that no one really cares about, with an extra garrison commander that the whales will invest in? So tell me in the comments down below, what do you think of these commanders? Are they going to be strong? Are they going to be weak? What do you really think about them? I respond to every comment. I give every single comment a nice little heart as well. So tell me what you think down below in the comments. It's much appreciated. It helps me get a vibe of what's going on in the Rise of Kingdoms community and the current opinion on what's going on in the game. Now, I just want to say thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.